Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session on return on engagement. I hope you've enjoyed the event so far. I say good afternoon if anyone's like me and over the other side of the Atlantic this evening, then good evening to you guys. And if we've got anyone from much further afield, then good morning. That, I think, has covered pretty much every time zone that we possibly could. So this afternoon, I'm going to be running through return on engagement, which was a phrase I think that came up during one of my conversations with the team at CNX. And I've got a few bits that I'm going to run through with you. But first off, probably best to introduce myself a little bit. Thus, the first point on the agenda, who is this guy? So my name is Charlie Litchfield. I work for Touch Associates as an associate director in the technology team. I started my career before I joined events, actually studying marine biology and oceanography, and then decided that wasn't exactly interested in that, so moved into the events world, focusing first on what was known then as participant care and what is now more fondly known as delegate management or attendee management. So long ago that actually I was processing paper fax back forms for people registering for events. It's definitely come on a long way since then. Since then, I've taken a real passion in event technology, and that's kind of where I've come to now, and why I'm lucky enough to be speaking to you guys at this event from CNX. Like a lot of event technologists, I feel like we've come out of the shadows a little bit over the last couple of years with everything that's been going on, and I know that there are others that are as keen on the technology side as well. So what we're then going to be running into is really what is return on engagement and some of the definitions that I've got around that. Then having a look at some cliches and some of the actual real meat of today's session. And then just touching on the measurement side of that engagement piece and obviously moving into questions, and then you'll be finished with me and you can go off and party with the DJ that's starting in a short while. So throughout this session, I'm going to be keeping an eye on questions that are coming in. I'm going to be using a couple of methods for this. You should all have a questions box up in front of you for the session at the moment, but I'll also be doing a couple of bits through Slido as well. So there's a QR code up on your screen at the moment. If your mobile device won't scan it, you can also go to slido.com, tap in that code that's up on the screen at the moment, and you can join in as well. So with that, I thought we'd open with a little bit of an interactive piece. So if you are able to go into the Slido app, you should find, as I click this button, that we're going to go into a live poll. And what I'm going to ask everyone is, what makes an event engaging? So we're going to build a bit of a word cloud out of this with the people we've got online for this session. And what I'm looking for here is to you, an event that you've attended, an event that you've planned. Just type in some words, and you can put in as many as you like into the system. Type in some words that have really driven that engagement piece for you. And nice to see we've already got a few results popping up. This is, to be fair, while I've got this up on screen and while everyone's having an opportunity to put their thoughts in, this is one of the things, this Slido app that we're using, and being able to see that real-time interaction. This is one of the many devices, and we're going to come into details of it later, that we use to try and make our virtual events as fun, as engaging as possible. And you'll notice as we run through that we'll talk a little bit more about the various different features, the various different techniques that we as an event agency have used, but also we've experienced as we've been going through. This particular feature, while I'm still padding a little bit while we get some more words in, you can see, and most of you will have used word cloud functions in the past. As we get more and more people putting in the same words, you'll see that the words grow in size, so we can see what the most popular themes are. Certainly connections and networking seem to be those that are most popular, and we'll be talking about some of that later as well. Some of the other results that we've got coming in, so I can see word cloud is one, always a bonus, because that's exactly what we're doing at the moment. Quizzes, interaction and interactivity, fun tech, interesting design will definitely come on to. Everyone loves a good after party. Kahoot quizzes is something that we've used as well, absolutely. Interesting topics. We'll be coming on to some techniques and some thoughts around the content side of things shortly as well. So you can keep your thoughts rolling in on that as well, but also bear in mind there is the Q&A section on the Slido app. You can just click on the Q&A tab there, and I'll be keeping an eye on that in real time throughout the session. So don't worry about keeping it all to the very end. And as people ask questions, you'll also be able to upvote other people's questions. So if you don't fancy asking your own, but you think somebody else has asked a great question, then please feel free to do so. That's kind of the equivalent of being sat in a meeting and saying you can interrupt at any time. That's exactly what we're going with here, but in a sort of more digital world. So moving on to what is return on engagement, and I think in the agenda I'd put ROI versus ROE. ROI became and indeed remains a buzzword in the events world, and one that I personally, I actually did a webinar with CNX a few months ago, have tried to avoid as much as possible, because I felt like it's almost not really hit the target from my point of view in terms of something to aim for at an event. The reality of the world that we all live and breathe in events is that creating a linear relationship between the funds that you've put into making an event a reality, creating a linear relationship between that and the positive impact that it actually has on your audience is almost impossible. The only exception, just in case anyone calls me out on this, the only exception is if you're running an event that is purely driven at direct sales. So, I mean, if you are putting on an event and the result of it is that customers buy your product, then it's quite easy to make that comparison. But for a lot of other events, especially internal, it's very difficult to identify what that return on investment in monetary terms is. That's where the phrase return on engagement came. It puts much more of a focus around actually how have we managed to engage and capture the attention of our audience versus purely putting pounds and dollar signs against it. And most important, it's also about how we measure it. And engagement has always been one of those incredibly mystical beasts that measuring it is incredibly challenging. In fairness, I could just end the session here and just say, right, well, what's return on engagement? It's measuring something that's very, very difficult to measure. I'm not going to, because I've got another 20 minutes and I think the DJ hasn't started yet, so it would probably be a little bit unfair. Because there's no real tangible method to measure engagement, this is all going to be quite subjective. And it means that unlike the likes of Jamie Oliver or whoever it might be, I can't write a magic recipe that says this is how you're going to get the most engagement from your event or how you're going to captivate your audience during the event. However, despite that, we can still give some tips and tricks on how to maximize it based on our experience. There are lots of variables that come into play as well. So everything that I'm about to go into all kind of pivots on some fairly key questions that we all have to ask ourselves when we're putting events on. Who is your audience and what type of thing are they actually going to interact with and what are they going to enjoy? What message are you trying to deliver? And we'll come onto this in a little bit more detail in a sec. Is it a positive message? Is it in fact a negative message, which sometimes it may be? And making sure that that's stitched into the fabric of all the content we're delivering as well. Importantly, are you expecting any action after your event? It's very easy to put on an event where you talk at somebody for 2 or 3 days, but you actually want something that's going to be actionable, something that drives that after the event as well. Otherwise, realistically, you've engaged someone for a very short period of time and nothing's really come of it after the event itself. And also budget is another variable that comes into it. We can talk about all these tremendously exciting solutions, and you can see that I'm in a very fancy virtual studio at the moment. But if the budget isn't there, then obviously you've got to tweak some of the techniques that you use. And actually some of the techniques that I'm going to talk about tonight don't require a monstrous budget in order to deliver. A lot of it is about using your imagination and trying to get the best out of the tools that you have at your fingertips. Like I said, return on engagement is definitely going to be a subjective thing. But one of the key elements is my red squiggly line. And this is something that comes up in all of our meetings when we first start speaking to clients and when we first start working with them. It's all well and good to decide, great, we want to hold an event and we want to deliver a message about our results from the financial year last year. But what's really important is ensuring that whatever message we've got from before the event all the way through and to after the event, it all connects. And so this red squiggly line represents that red thread that runs through everything that we do. That's everything from content to delivery of that content, to the design of the platforms we use, to the types of technology we use, even to the tone of voice of the communications that we're sending out. Keeping that consistency, keeping that single red thread running through everything we do, just helps to hold on to your audience's attention throughout as well. So, I need to move in one direction. I'm trying to move in a mirror here. So I wanted to just sum up, because I have the tendency to waffle on a little bit, and I try to avoid doing so too much. Wanted to just sum up what is return on engagement, and wanted to just write a little paragraph to try and capture that. For me, return on engagement is a strategy not only to create engaging experiences through all channels of your event, but to measure it. And most importantly, it's a commitment to actually act on those results and draw some sort of action or insight from those results. So next, we're on to cliches. This is one of my favourite parts when people are presenting various elements. And usually, you probably would have seen this within a pitch scenario, if you've ever been pitched to. They always come up with something to tie things together when we're sort of speaking about a particular subject. So that could be 3 keys to unlocking success. This comes up a lot. We also talk about pillars a lot, and I'm definitely guilty of this. I've often categorized things as pillars. Or you might have 3 steps to success. So in today's session, I decided that I was going to go a little bit different and didn't want to follow one of those cliches. So instead of keys, pillars, or steps, we are going to go with 3 magical blue bananas of focus. So I'm going to talk about 3 key things that can really drive engagement at your event. This isn't an exhaustive list. Technology, design, and content are not the be-all and end-all. There's so many other bits that fit into this, but these are going to be the real key focus areas that I'll look at today. So first of all, onto technology. This is a subject incredibly close to my heart, as it's the majority of my role. And obviously, the event we're attending today is hosted on a virtual platform. But there are some key questions to ask when we're talking about the type of technology and the different platforms that we use when it comes to presenting our event and engaging with our audience. First of all, does one size fit all? There are lots of platforms out there that claim to be the one package that you need to deliver a successful and engaging event. We often find that that's not the case, and maybe a combination of different technologies may well answer the brief even better. How responsive is your audience? I've sat in a number of meetings where we've had varied feedback from our clients of our audience is not going to embrace using mobile technology to vote in a poll, to others that are completely comfortable with using a mobile app and engaging with different technologies, or even using photo booths. I know that's something that the CNX team have got running on this event as well. And finally, and possibly most importantly, and it sort of comes into one of the other subjects we're going to look into, does your content actually fit with the technology? So there are a number of different technologies you can use, but using sort of fun interactive quizzes when you're delivering serious financial results might not be the right fit, and actually quite a long way away from engaging your audience. You might find that you actually start to lose them slightly if you overuse that tech. So on that note, talking about interaction, if you're all still in Slido, and if not, the QR code is there, I'd be really interested to just understand over the last couple of years where event technology really has accelerated incredibly rapidly. If you can all just, and you can tick multiple boxes on this, just select which technologies from this list you've actually had experience of either using. There we go, straight to 100% on all of them. You've either had experience of using and actually implementing yourself at your events, or if you've been an attendee at an event and you've had experience of being the end user for some of these platforms as well. So I'll give it a couple of secs for some of those results to come in. In the meantime, I'll have a look at a couple of questions that we've had. So One of the questions that's come in is how do you show your clients when engagement has improved when it's a subjective measure? I'm going to come back to that a little bit at the end when I talk about measurement, but you're quite right. It's a very difficult one to actually prove that they're doing the right thing and that they're making tangible differences. But there are a number of measures we can do, and again, referring to how CNX works, there are a number of ways that we can understand how people have interacted with content, how long we've held their attention for when it's come to a live session. There are a number of different ways that we can do that, and we can start to prove to a client, event after event, how they're improving what they're doing. One of the other questions that's come in with transitioning back into the live events world, what are some key differences regarding engagement types and plugins that work more so for live rather than virtual and vice versa? It's a really good question, and there's a big focus at the moment on what this new hybrid world is going to look like. And we've certainly seen that there are some plugins and some technologies that work better than others in different environments. Slido, as an example that we're using today, actually works brilliantly across both of those environments. Everyone nowadays walks around with a mobile phone in their pocket, and they're able to access those kind of technologies. But you may find things like a virtual photo booth is not going to work as well in a live environment, and potentially, again, you might start to alienate parts of your audience. Having said that, what we found is the best way to do it is to balance those different enhancements across both of your audiences. So it may feel quite exclusive to the virtual audience to have a virtual photo booth, but then your live audience might have something else that then brings the balance back again. So looking back to the results of that poll, I mean, we can see straight away that we've got quite a good sort of balance across all of the different platforms and different technologies. And I think that really speaks to the way that events have evolved, and the point that I was making before, that one size doesn't necessarily fit all. So from our experience, and this is just an example, and this literally changes pretty much every day, we use a whole suite of different technologies. And you can see that CNX is in there, but we've got loads of others around audience interaction, file sharing, polling, Q&A, chat, photo booths, social aggregation. All of these different technologies deployed in the right ways can really help to add to that engagement piece. Like I said before though, it's important to note that it's not all about using technology just for the sake of it. So again, in the same spirit as the return on engagement piece, I wanted to just put a paragraph together to really highlight sort of the takeaway in terms of technology and using it for engagement. It is a powerful tool, but it's also got the potential to be a risky distraction. If you fill your event with too much tech, it can have quite the opposite effect that you're looking for. So what we can't fall into is the trap of using tech for tech's sake. So, moving on. Design is my next magical blue banana. I think that's what I called it before. And it's one of those things where I'm going to show you some examples of some of the evolution of the platform designs that we've used within CNX itself. But also just to talk to that before I do go through those examples about that red thread piece as well. It's really, really key. We've only got one limit when it comes to design, and that's our imagination. And I think all of us were guilty when we first started virtual events of designing things that were very familiar and very reassuring. But as time has gone on, one of the key ways that we found that we can really engage our audience is to really think outside the box, very cliched term, but really think outside the box in terms of how we design those environments, those virtual platforms, and those experiences for our attendees. Also worth noting, and this tallies into design and to technology as well, that less often is really more. We've found so much feedback over the last couple of years about people feeling disengaged with an event is when they felt it's too overcomplicated. The user experience and the user journey is hugely important. At the end of the day, your attendees at the event are the ones that matter. If they can't find their way to the right room, or if they feel that they can't access the content they're looking for, then immediately they're going to feel less engaged with what you're trying to deliver. So as I said, I'm going to just walk through. I mean, this is actually one of our first examples of a CNX environment that we build. And you can see that actually, compared to some of the things that you will have seen along the way, it's relatively basic. But as we continued through our journey over the last few years, we really started to learn a little bit more about 3D mapping technology, creating a little bit more depth and perspective within our environments. And even as we get to the end, and I'm going to keep on scrolling through these just to show you a couple of examples, you can see that we started to use a lot more different styles of environment. So perhaps more outside based, perhaps even based on a real life building. But then we start to get slightly more crazy, to be completely honest. We'll just skip through a couple more. So we then start to get to some environments that really are a little bit more out of the box. So we've got this one which was designed around the whole of the outside of a building. We had one that was designed entirely around a festival theme, which again was very, very popular. This one, I'm not even sure what it was designed about, but this was again part of our design team wanting to look at how we can really pull that red thread through everything we do and create something a little bit more innovative and exciting. Most recently, we've done one based on hopscotch. We've had one that was based on a pop-up children's book. And my personal favourite, again, because I'm a bit of a geek at the heart of it, was one that we based on the back of a computer chip as well. So in terms of takeaways from the design piece, this is another thing where, like I said, the imagination really is our only limit. So the benefit of having an online presence as well as the live presence, or even just a virtual presence when it comes to your events, is that you have got that freedom to really go mad with a design. However, it's very important to make sure you stay on brand and message. We were able to base the event that we did on the back of a computer chip because it was an event purely focused on electronics and semiconductors. But it was only through the genius of some of our creative guys that we were able to get to that design and think outside the box slightly. So the final pillar, blue banana, key step that I wanted to talk to you about today was around content. Content is hugely, hugely important, and we have a team of content specialists that we work with here at Touch, that work with our clients and work with our speakers to make sure not only the content is written in the right way that stays on brand, stays on message, but also that they deliver it in the right way as well. And that's a really key part of it. Most importantly, with the content side of things, is what virtual has opened up is the ability not just to engage with your audience during those 1, 2 or 3 days during the actual event itself. You've got huge opportunity to be able to engage with people before the event. That could be days or weeks. And for me, one of the more important ones as well is after that event, talking about how we then measure, but also how we bring action to the messages that we've delivered during the events is really, really key. There are 3 different types of content that we talk about as well. So static, release and live. So static is often something that we've got already on a virtual platform or already available at the point that we launch an event. Release is something we want to generate a little bit of excitement about, which is often a really good way of keeping your audience engaged. That doesn't just have to be pre-event either. That can be something that you can have some limited or exclusive releases that happen after the event or even during the event if you're doing some sort of reveal. And then we've got our sort of planned live content as well. So similar to this session here, having your speakers actually delivering a message in person and react to some of the questions and things during the session as well. And I think what's really key with content is looking at the strategy of the journey that you want to take your audience on. And that's something we're very, very keen on here at Touch. We talk about moving people from the rational side to the emotional side. It takes people from understanding the message that somebody's delivering to you to actually believing in that message. And what that drives is action. So if somebody's sort of chatting away at a session and delivering some very interesting content, and the audience understands it, then they're going to draw their own conclusions from that. And they're going to be sort of saying, well, yeah, I get it. I see the message that's being delivered, but they're not necessarily going to remember or most importantly, do anything with that information. Once you move them into that emotional thinking piece, once you drive them towards really believing in what you're telling them and motivating them to act on it, that's the point where that becomes a truly, truly memorable delivery of content. So again, as I've done with each of the sections, I wanted to put a little bit of a takeaway section in there as well. Content doesn't have to be limited to the days of your event only. We're no longer in the position where you fly in, have 2-day event and then fly back out again and that's it. It's all done and forgotten. And I think that's a lasting impact of everything that's gone on over the last couple of years. Taking advantage of the pre and post-event opportunities for additional releases of exclusive content is going to enhance your engagement with your audience. So finally, and I can see a couple of questions that have come in as well, which I'll jump in. Finally is around the measurement piece. And like I said, this is a subjective thing. We understand that there is no magic ruler to measure how engaged people have been at your event. However, there are a number of ways you can do it. I touched on the ability to see what content people have looked at during the event. And also things like dwell times on certain pieces of content. How long have they spent viewing the videos? How many people came back after the event? How many people logged in before? All of these sorts of things start to build up a picture. We've also used, and I know we've used a number of methods for this, surveys and things where you can actually ask people's opinion of how they were. But one of the keys there again is around keeping that as simple as we possibly can, because we know, and we've all been there, when we receive a 5-page survey post-event, we know how disengaging that is itself. And so often we're guilty of saying, well, we'll just mark everything as an 8 because it was all right. Maybe that's a British thing, but certainly that's the kind of results we see. So asking 2 or 3 very, very direct questions about how people found the experience really is the key. And most importantly is make it actionable. You've got to actually be able to take that measurement and say, what are we practically going to do next time to raise the bar and keep people more engaged? So I'm going to jump into a couple of questions, and I'm conscious that I'm running just a little bit over, or just about to. So we've been through a couple of those. Question that's come in, do you find gamification within virtual events useful and relevant? Absolutely, but again, it depends on the content and the message that you're trying to deliver. I think that's going to be the really key piece there. We've had great success. We had one that was themed around a travel theme, and we had people going off and finding loose flip-flops around the platform as an example. Some other ways of doing it is really bringing out people's competitive nature. So using features like leaderboard and things like that really does help to drive people to go and view that content or go and find that sort of missing item in a treasure hunt. Couple of questions as well that also came through. So what technologies do you find the most engagement from the audience? I'm not going to completely cop out of this answer, but it really does depend on the answer. We've had some pharmaceutical clients that could not get enough of the photo booth and the social wall, but then we've had other what you would consider to be sort of more fun industries, so maybe more retail based, that haven't used it at all, but have been absolutely loving the fact that we've got a Q&A session that they're able to put their thoughts into. So it really depends on the audience, and I think that's what's key to me, is using that suite of technologies and having an understanding of all the different technologies available is a really key part of that. And the final question that I'll jump into, which I think is a really key one to finish on before I eat into too much of the DJ's time, which is, where has it gone? How do you drive engagement at hybrid as well as in-person events? It's a really, really key question, and one that I think we're probably all going to be asking ourselves for the next few months, if not years. But I think what's really important, and we look at the word cloud that we generated earlier on in the session, what's really important, and those 2 main topics that were top of everyone's list were connections and networking. We have a number of technologies that we use to try and bring people together, whether that's one-to-one meeting technologies, whether that's things like spatial chat, where you've got this sort of distance-based volume engineering, where you've essentially got an online reception event. But what's really, really important is working out ways where we can bring the live audience and the virtual audience together and make them feel connected. And tools like your Slido, or even something like a crowd mics, where people can actually turn their own smartphone into a microphone and speak at a session, even if part of that's happening in person as well, really help to make everyone feel included and everyone feel part of that. So that's it from me. I apologise I went over by a couple of minutes, but hopefully there was some interesting bits and pieces in there. And I know that the DJ is starting off again. There should be a push notification coming up on your screen if it hasn't already. But thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you for the questions that have come through, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your days.